In another new low in this whole election cycle, a robocall went out to Utahns across the state accusing Evan McMullin of being gay, of being a sympathizer in other kinds of ways, and really going after him in a very, very personal way. Something we've not seen in Utah for a very long time, although we've seen something like this in our past. Let's talk about that just for a moment, see what the kind of impact that is going to have on the state of Utah. Let's start with you, Ben.
Well, certainly, just when you thought it couldn't go any lower, it went lower than that. And there's the chance this backfires. Even though the white supremacist, white nationalist who paid for this has apologized and said he's really sorry about all of this.
After the fact.
After the fact. There is a chance that this, especially with our battleground Utah status, that this backfires and this hurts Trump, that in your efforts to try to help your candidate, you ended up causing more harm than good.
It's a great observation.
Yes, I agree. I think the big risk here is for the Trump campaign, because this may push some people who are sort of still trying to decide whether they vote for Evan McMullin or they go with their Republican nominee. I think there may be some who look at this as so offensive. And again, the problem is that it sort of fits into this theme. This is not out of the blue, right? This fits into the theme that we've seen with the Trump campaign. And so for some voters, this may just be a little too much. And so I think that, you know, the net result of that may be a little bit more support for McMullin and a little bit less for Trump.
Well, what happened historically? Let's talk about the Bill Orton advertisement that came out, the flyer. Let's talk about that for a second, what the impact that had.
Right, so this was just before a general election. You had, and again, a general election where you would expect the Republican to have won. Carl Snow was running and ran this ad basically showing a contrast between Carl Snow's family, large family, and then Bill Orton sitting by himself because he wasn't married, didn't have children, and that was the kind of ad that really struck people as being offensive. And again, this was before we had early voting, and so people went to the polls and basically voted for a Democrat in a place where we would not have expected them to vote for a Democrat, and the Democrats won the 3rd district.
So we see that Utahns do not respond favorably to negative campaigning, and I'm sorry, this robocall insulted Evan McMullin's mother.
Yes,
I mean, really, that's a new low, right?
When you're calling out someone's mama, that's real bad.
That's when it's gone.
You can't go there.
When it's gone too far, when you invoke any part of the family. So do you agree with this? The negative campaign just does not work very well?
Utah voters do not respond well to negative campaigns. And you even look on a local race now, the Love Owens race. Voters are not really liking these types of ads. They haven't. I still don't understand why some of these political action committees continue to try it. It doesn't seem to work.
Well, one of the things I have to say about that, however, is that the purpose of negative ads is not necessarily what you think it is, right? So the purpose of negative ad is not necessarily to say, oh, don't vote for the candidate you were planning on voting for, right? Often the purpose of the negative ad is to make people think, oh, maybe I don't want to vote at all, right? It's sometimes intended to be voter suppression.
It's a suppression effort?
That's right. And sometimes it's really designed not to get them to change their mind, but to get them to pause and say, here's some bad stuff about this candidate you might not know. And then again, if that's followed up appropriately with a positive message, it might give you a way to say, oh yeah, there's another alternative here. And so sometimes negative ads can work, but again, ordinarily people don't like to see negative campaigning, but I don't believe that Utahns are particularly opposed to it.
And I think that there's a perception that going negative means you're desperate. And so, who really wants to go with the loser?
Who does? Indeed.
Just
that is the
asking
question.
rhetorically.
That is a very good question. Well, so that's the question these final days before the election too. Is it? You talked about suppression a little bit, but is this a mobilization effort? Because it might be hard to win people over this time. Are you really trying to convert people, or are you just trying to mobilize people with some of these?
With the negative?
Well, just at the end of this campaign, let's get beyond the negative for a second. I mean, what's left? Because it's the follow-up message that we were talking about.
It's all about turnout. I mean, at this point, you have to get the voters out.
Rally your people.
And
get them out.
You don't go and get the buses from the retirement homes anymore, right? I mean,
No, you just
you're
get
text
them to,
messaging.
please
you're
fill
like,
it out.
please,
Yeah,
That's
text
exactly
message
what you do.
mail it in.
And you don't really see that much here because again, you've seen so much kind of. Republicans tend to be much loyal more loyal voters than Democrats are anyway. But again, nationally, what you're seeing is that the Clinton campaign is very, very well organized for this mobilization effort.
That's very true. Well, thank you so much for your commentary. When you all are running for office, we'll keep it all on the up and up, all right? Nothing but clean campaigning.
Don't blame me, I voted for Kodos.
Thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here.